But first, Hillary Clinton on the mend in that new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll that shows President Obama's approval ratings are slipping. NBC's chief White House correspondent and political director Chuck Todd has more on all of that. Good morning to you, Chuck.
Well, good morning, Meredith. Well, first on Secretary Clinton. She was on her way to a meeting at the White House yesterday afternoon. She fell, fractured her elbow, went quickly to George Washington Hospital, got treated there, and apparently is going to have surgery later this week, and they expect to be on the mend. Meanwhile, speaking of cracks, political cracks, we're seeing some with President Obama. Our new NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows honeymoon might have be coming to an end, but it's not personal, it's professional. In interviews around the country, we're finding a lot of folks getting very nervous about the budget deficit and the increased government intervention, including on things like these car company bailouts. After 5 months in the White House, President Obama is dealing with an American public that is judging him more for the actions he's taking than the promises he's made.
I was expecting a lot more change. I was expecting not just cosmetic change, but radical change.
56% of Americans surveyed approve of the job the president is doing.
I think people like him personality-wise. He comes across very positive.
But that's down 5 points from a month ago. Mr. Obama's job approval plunged among self-described political independents, down from 60% to 46%.
Policy-wise, it's difficult because things haven't changed that much.
The big new issue with the public, increased government intervention in the economy, in particular, the recent restructuring of General Motors.
We shouldn't be bailing out these big companies.
69% say they're concerned the government is too involved in the private sector. 53% disapproved of the government's decision to bail out GM and Chrysler. And then there's the president's big summer push to pass health care.
I think the health care plan that Obama proposes is scary to me personally, because I'm going to have to give up something.
76% say it's important that any reform include a choice between a government insurance plan and a private one. And while the public remains concerned about the nation's growing budget deficit, they don't blame Mr. Obama for the country's financial ills. Asked who was more responsible for the size of the deficit, 46% said the Bush administration, 21% said the Democrats in Congress, 7% said the Republicans in Congress, and just 6% said the Obama administration.
He inherited this. This is a mess that was, on the horizon when he got there.
Two quick political notes. Judge Sonia Sotomayor, she appears to be polling very well with the public, equal or greater than how John Roberts did when he was nominated to be Chief Justice. By the way, the Republican Party hitting another all-time low in their favorable rating, so no benefit there from this slight dip, President Obama. And my favorite number out of this poll, despite all of these problems with the car companies, David, 3-1, by a 3-1 margin, Americans tell us they're more likely to now buy American when it comes to their cars. So a patriotic response.
Interesting. Chuck Todd down in Washington this morning. Chuck, thanks a lot. Former Vermont Governor Howard Dean was in charge of the Democratic National Committee when Barack Obama was elected president. He's also author of the new book, Howard Dean's Prescription for Real Health Care Reform. Governor Dean, good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, David.
I want to get to health care in just a moment, but I want to start with some of these poll numbers, and I want to combine a couple of them at the same time. The approval-disapproval is striking. It's down from 61%, very high number, to 56%, still a high number, reflecting some of the governing challenges. But look at this issue of government intervention. Those who are concerned total 69%. Government intervention, whether it's health care, the auto companies, government regulation. How big of a problem is this for the president?
I'm a little surprised. I don't think it's a big problem for the president because they clearly trust him and they think he's doing a good job. I am surprised about the reaction to the bailouts of General Motors. Not so much to the banks. You can understand why people are mad at the banks and so forth, but I'm surprised at that. I don't think it's a big problem. I think because the car company, it's been handled very well. These car companies are going to be in and out of bankruptcy quickly and back on their feet, I think.
But a real warning sign for this president who relies on the support of independent voters is that he's gone from 60% approval there to 46%. And this is a president who watches that number very carefully. And also you have former President Bush breaking his silence, being more critical, saying during a speech, I know it's going to be the private sector that leads this country out of the current economic times we're in. It's government that's not able to create wealth. There begins to be some momentum in terms of opposition on government interference.
Yeah, and the Republicans have always been very, very good at opposition. That's what they do well. And I think we do have to respond more forcefully, explaining. Right now the president's been out all by himself I think, frankly, one of the problems is healthcare's got to start moving in the Senate, and as your poll showed out, it has to have a public option. There has to be a choice for the public. They can't be consigned to dealing with the insurance companies from now on. That's going to be a big test for the Obama administration.
Well, I'm going to have you explain that. When you talk about a public option, it's the government saying, look, here is a big government-sponsored plan that you can have alongside private insurance. The president says you can keep what you like,
right?
But here's this public option. And you know, critics, I mentioned President Bush again, he said this is nationalizing health care. Republicans don't want it. It's also incredibly expensive. But you say in your book, you can't have reform without it.
You can't have reform without it. Right now, why would you put $1 trillion into a system that we have that has served us, it has increased, the inflationary rate has gone up by 250% every single year. This is crazy. You can't do this. And there's a guy on the show earlier that said, we want real reform. The only way you can really reform the healthcare system and bring down the costs and save our jobs is to give the Americans a choice between the private system and the public system.
But you wouldn't have a private system, conservatives say. If you have a government plan, nobody chooses a private system because the government can artificially set prices low.
First of all, that's nonsense. Second of all, we've had a government system for 50 years. The Republicans didn't like it then. It's called Medicare. Everybody over 65 is already in a government system. Let the people who are under 65 make a choice between what they think is best for them and whatever their ideology is. Let them be in the public side, let them be in the private side, let them choose. Let's not have the Congress and the insurance companies choosing.
Finally, on the big news this week out of Iran, these protests continue after the questionable re-election of President Ahmadinejad. In Cairo, when he gave a big speech to the Muslim world, the president said, people yearn for certain things. The freedom to live as you choose was one of them. Human rights, he said, that we will support everywhere. Is President Obama doing enough to live up to those words in Cairo?
Exactly the smart thing. Anybody who knows anything about Iran knows that the Iranian people are very, very proud of being Iranian. For the United States to overtly interfere in this would be a terrible mistake. We do not want to undercut the protesters. This is one of the good things that's happened in Iran, is that people have stood up to this authoritarian government. Our government's doing exactly the right thing. Let them go. We should support them covertly if we need to, but the president's doing exactly the right thing.
All right, Governor Howard Dean, always good to see you.
David, thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much.